We begin today scene 16. Otley and Lincoln. Lincoln has come to Otley's place looking for Lacy, and Otley tells him, "Believe me, on my credit I speak truth. Since first your nephew Lacy went to France, I have not seen him. It seemed strange to me when Dodger told me that he stayed behind, neglecting the high charge the king imposed." So he says that I am also surprised that Lincoln did not even obey the king and did not go to France. Lincoln: "Trust me, Sir Roger Otley, I did think your counsel had given head to this attempt, drawn to it by the love he bears your child." Lincoln tells him that I thought that you gave my nephew support in this matter because he loves your daughter. Here I did hope to find him in your house, and therefore I thought that you have given him shelter in your house. But now I see mine error and confess my judgment wronged you by conceiving so. So now that you tell me that you have no idea about his whereabouts, so I see my error. So he is kind of apologizing that he believed Otley to be in the fault and to be in the wrong, and to support his nephew in the amorous affair with his daughter. But from Otley's speech he understands that he wrongly believed that, and therefore he apologizes. So at the very beginning we see the relationship between the two is a bit strained. Otley and Lincoln, they do not admire each other, or they do not like each other. Otley: "Lodge in my house, say you? Trust me, my lord, I love your nephew Lacy too dearly, so much to wrong his honor." So you suspected that he was lodging in my house, he was staying in my house, and you trust me that I will never damage your nephew's honor by letting him stay here. Here Otley is being a little bit sarcastic, hinting at the false superiority of the nobles. "To witness I speak truth, I let you know how careful I have been to keep my daughter free from all conference or speech of him. So you should realize that I have been extremely careful that my daughter cannot get in touch with your nephew, and I kept her under observation. Not that I scorn your nephew, but in love I bear your honor, lest your noble blood should by my mean worth be dishonored. So it is not that I hate your nephew, but since you are a noble man, for the sake of your reputation, I don't want to sully your nobility or noble blood by marrying off my daughter with your nephew." So Otley and Lincoln both believe in class distinction, and both do not like interclass marriage, but we cannot but feel that Otley is a little bit angry with Lincoln for suspecting him, because the nobility always looked down upon the middle classes. And Lincoln in an aside says, "How far the churl's tongue wanders from his heart." Churl means, a clever guy or fellow, a term of scorn. So he says, this clever guy, his speech wanders from his heart, that is, deviates from the truth. So he does not believe all of what Otley has to say. Well, Sir Roger Otley, I believe you, with more than many thanks for the kind love so much you seem to bear me." So he is also being a little sarcastic, because Otley said that thinking of your honor, I will not allow my daughter to marry your nephew, and Lincoln sarcastically thanks him by saying, "Okay, thank you for loving me so much. But my lord, let me request your help to seek my nephew, whom if I find, I will straight embark for France." So please help me in this matter in finding Lacy, and when I find him, I will straight away send him to France. So shall your rose be free, my thoughts at rest, and much care die which now lives in my breast. And if I can send him to France, then your rose will be free of my nephew's approaches. So if I can send him to France, then Rose will be free of the courtship of Lacy, and my thoughts at rest, that is, I don't have to worry, and much care die which lives in my breast. So all the anxiety, care means anxiety, all the anxiety that I have now, that will die. So all of us would be satisfied. Then Sybil enters, and in this scene we see that a development that Lacy and Rose, they will escape. Rose will escape from Otley's place, and then Fark will arrive with a pair of shoes for Rose, but basically he comes here to misguide Lincoln and Otley, and Fark tells them the wrong church so that they do not find Lacy and Rose. Fark would send them to the church where Hammond was trying to marry Jane. So by this clever means, the marriage between Hammond and Jane would be stopped, and Lacy and Rose would be able to marry. So this is a hilarious situation, a humorous situation, and we see that the old men, the two old men, they are beguiled, they are fooled by the others. Sybil comes and says, "O Lord, help, for God's sake, my mistress, O my young mistress." Where is thy mistress? What has become of her? She has gone, she has fled. Gone? Whither is she fled? I know not, forsooth. She has fled out of doors with Hans the shoemaker. I saw them scud, 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 apace, apace. So speaking in a very racy colloquial language, Sybil informs them that her mistress Rose has fled the house with Hans the shoemaker. And it will be some time before Otley and Lincoln would suspect that Hans is none other than Lacy. But at the outset they are too shocked to hear about Rose's escape, so they take some time before they can realize what is happening. So scud, scud, scud means that they have scuttled off, they have left very quickly. Apace, apace means very fast. So they have run away from this place very fast. Which way? What, John, where be my men? Which way? So Otley is very anxious that his daughter has fled, so he calls his men. I know not, and it please your worship. Sybil says, I do not know, which might be a lie, because probably she has been instructed by Rose to say that, to inform them that she has fled. Fled with a shoemaker, can this be true? O Lord, sir, as true as God is in heaven. So it is true. Sybil says that they have fled, and she has fled with a shoemaker. So for Otley it is a shock, because a shoemaker, he would look down upon a shoemaker. And Lincoln in an aside says, her love turned shoemaker, I am glad of this. I am happy that that Rose now loves a shoemaker. So I am happy, because then Lacy has no chance. But Lincoln at this moment does not suspect that Lacy and Hans could be the same person. Otley, a flaming butterbox, a shoemaker, will she forget her birth, requite my care with such ingratitude? So you see here the pride in birth, that is class. So Otley considers the shoemakers to be below par, even though the shoemakers also belong to the middle class like Otley, but they are artisan class, working class, And Otley is not working class. He does not, work as an artisan or a laborer. He is a grocer. So he, we may say, is in the upper echelon of the middle class, and therefore he looks down upon the shoemakers and says that Rose is so inconsiderate as not to consider the higher birth and all the cares that Otley took of her. So she is an ungrateful daughter. Such ingratitude scorned she young Hammond to love a honeykin, a needy knave. So honeykin is a diminutive of Hans. So as it appears that butterbox or honeykin, they refer to a Dutch. So she is she scorned Hammond, that is, she rejected Hammond for the sake of a shoemaker. So that is unacceptable to Otley. Well, let her fly. A needy knave means that a Dutch shoemaker is poor. So she ran for a poor shoemaker. Well, let her fly. I will not fly after her. Let her starve if she will. She is none of mine. So Otley says angrily that let her escape. I will not look for her. She herself will starve by marrying a poor shoemaker. And Lincoln says, be not so cruel, sir. So Lincoln would rather suppose that Otley should look for his daughter. And Sybil, in an aside, says, I am glad she escaped. I am happy that Rose has escaped. I will not account of her as of my child. So Otley says that I will abandon her. I will, I will not accept her anymore as my daughter. Was there no better object for her eyes but a foul, drunken lover, swill belly, a shoemaker? That is brave. So you see, even though it is a comedy and the characters are very, characters are much lower class than nobility, but the situation is similar. For example, in Shakespeare's tragedy King Lear, Lear abandoned Cordelia. Lear said that he will not accept his youngest daughter Cordelia as his daughter anymore because she refused to tell him how much she loved him. That is, she refused to quantify her love for him, or she refused to say that she loves him more than her would-be husband. So here Otley says that I will not consider her as my child because she is marrying without my consent. So we see the same thing here, though the planes are different. One is a tragedy, this one is a comedy. In one there is the king who is abandoning her child, and here it is a grocer, a middle class person who is abandoning her child, her daughter. But in both cases, a father is angry with his daughter and abandons his child. Was there no better object for her eyes but a foul, drunken lover, swill belly, lover, a lout? So he is very scornful of the shoemaker. A shoemaker, that's brave. That's that's great. So Otley is being sarcastic. So that is, if that is her decision to marry a shoemaker, then that is great. Let her do that. Yeah, forsooth, it is a very brave shoe, and as fit as a pudding. So Fark purposely, on purpose, Fark, uses the same word brave. When Otley says that is brave, Fark says yes, it is a brave shoe. So brave is a word of praise. But when Otley used it, then it means that is grand, that is in a sarcastic way. So Fark brought a pair of shoes for Rose. How now, what knave is this? From whence comest thou? No knave, sir. I am Fark the shoemaker. A knave and gulls. These are the two types of characters which we find in comedies, mostly Elizabethan comedies. A knave is it usually means a churlish person or a cunning person. It is a kind of always pejoratively used, and a gull is a stupid person, a fool. So knaves are cunning, so they fool others. Here Otley says, what knave is this, meaning, what childish cunning person is this? No knave, sir, I am Ferg the shoemaker, Lasty Roger's chief lasty journeyman, and I come hither to take up the pretty leg of sweet Mistress Rose, and thus hoping your worship is in as good health as I was at the making hereof. I bid you farewell. Yours, Ferg. So Ferg's speech is ridiculous because it is witty. He says that I am no knave, I am the shoemaker, and lasty here is used in a good sense. Lasty Roger's chief lasty journeyman. Lasty here means energetic. So I am the journeyman of Ferg, journeyman of Roger, the chief shoemaker, and I came here to take up the leg of Mistress Rose, that is to fit these shoes in the foot of Rose. And the last sentence, he says that I hope your worship is in good health as I was at the making hereof. As I was when I made the pair of shoes, I hope that you are also in good health. And the last sentence is like that when one writes a letter. I bid you farewell, yours, Ferg. So he is deliberately making an inappropriate speech like a polite letter. So he says, I bid you goodbye, I am leaving. Stay, stay, sir knave. Come hither, shoemaker. 'Tis happy the knave is put before the shoemaker. There are two meanings of this sentence. One is that the word knave is used before the word shoemaker is used. That is good. And the other meaning is the knave is put before the shoemaker. That is, he indicates that Otley and Lincoln, they are knaves because he is the shoemaker. Or else I would not have vouchsafed to come back to you. I am moved, for I star. So I am moved means I am impressed, but here it is literal. Ferg says that I star, I go from here to another place, so I move. I am moved. So I would not have come back unless you put the knave before the shoemaker. My lord, this villain calls us knaves by craft. So Otley realizes this and says that this villain calls us knave in a clever manner by craft. This word villain often is used in Elizabethan tragedy. We find it frequently in Shakespeare also. Now the word villain originally meant a serf or a servant in the feudal system. That is, in the feudal system, the noblemen had their, had people below them in rank, so they were villain. Particularly, the tenants of the land, they were the directly in the hierarchy, feudal hierarchy. They were under a squire or a nobleman. So villain did not originally have the meaning that we have today, that is a bad person or an evil person. Then it is by the gentle craft, and to call one knave gently is no harm. Because Otley uses the word craft, by which he means, cunning, cleverness. Ferg deliberately takes the word craft by its literal meaning, that is, shoemaking is a craft. So he says that I am the shoemaker, I am calling you by my gentle craft, and therefore calling you gently knave, and that is no harm. Sit your worship Mary. And in an aside, Sib, your young mistress, I'll so bob them now my Master Iyer is Lord Mayor of London. I will bob them, that is, I will fool them. So in an aside he tells Sybil that regarding your young mistress, that is regarding Rose, you need not be worried because I am going to fool these two. And since my master Simon Iyer is now the Mayor of London, so we'll find a way about how to fool Lincoln and Otley. That is his intent. Tell me, Sirrah, whose man are you? That is, who sent you? I am glad to see your worship so merry. I have no more to this gear, no stomach as yet to a red petticoat, pointing to Sybil. So, Ferg deliberately misinterprets Lincoln's Otley's speech when Otley asks him, whose man are you? That is, whose servant are you or who sent you? Ferg interprets it as, who is your wife? And pointing at Sybil, he says that I am no more to this gear. That is, I have no appetite for such stuff. That is, I am not going to accept Sybil as my wife. No stomach as yet to a red petticoat. Red petticoat, that is a scarlet lady, common term for a woman. So I have no appetite for a woman like Sybil. He means not, sir, to woo you to this maid, but only doth demand whose man you are. So Lincoln tries to tell him the proper meaning, thinking that Ferg did not understand Otley's speech. Ferg, I sing now to the tune of Rogero. Roger, my fellow, is now my master. So it is an allusion to a popular song, Italian song, as you can see in the footnote. The tune of Rogero, an Italian ballad, popular in England, and it is a pun on Hodge's proper name, Roger. So basically he says that I am a man of Roger, I work under Roger. Sirrah, knowest thou one Hans a shoemaker? Hans, shoemaker? Oh yes, stay, yes, I have him. I tell you what, I speak it in secret. Mr. Rose and he are by this time, no, not so, but shortly are to come over one another with canoe dance the shaking of the sheets. So he alludes to the clandestine marriage and sexual affair between Hans and Rose, and says that yes, I tell it secretly, but actually he is not telling it secretly because everybody is there, and uses this ballad, line from a ballad, canoe dance the shaking of the sheets. It was employed in Elizabethan writers in bawdy jokes. So this ballad is about sexual adventures. So it is a bawdy joke. It is that Hans, and in an aside says, I will so gull these diggers. So I will fool these two who are trying to investigate. Knowest thou then where he is? Yes, forsooth, yeah, Mary. Mary is an oath, means Mary. Canst thou in sadness, that is, can you tell us seriously? The word sad in the Elizabethan period often meant serious. No, forsooth, no, Mary. That is, no, I can't tell you. Tell me, good honest fellow, where he is, and thou shalt see what I will bestow of thee. So now Otley tries to bribe him because he is not ready to spill the beans, and he tells Ferg that I will reward you if you tell me. Honest fellow, no sir, not so sir. My profession is the gentle craft. Because Otley addresses him as good honest fellow. So Ferg means that I am no honest fellow. So you can bribe me without worries. You can give me money. Because my profession is the gentle craft. I care not for seeing, I love feeling. So I am a shoemaker, and when I make the shoe I have to feel the shoe. So for me feeling is important. So what he indicates is that I want to feel your money in my hand. So you give me your money and then I will tell you. Let me feel it here. Aureum tenus, 10 pieces of gold. Genuum tenus, 10 pieces of silver. And then Fark is your man in a new pair of stretchers. So Aureum tenus means up to the ears, but Fark deliberately misinterprets as 10 pieces of gold, and Genuum tenus means up to the knees, and Fark misinterprets as 10 pieces of silver, and he says that I will go the whole way if I am given 10 gold pieces, but will do very little if given just 10 silver pieces. So you have to give me 10 gold pieces, and 10 silver pieces will not do. Here is an angel, part of the reward, which I will give thee. Tell me where he is. So Otle offers him money, gives him money. Angel was money, on the back of which an angel was printed. And I will give you the rest later if you first tell me. No point. Shall I betray my brother? No. Shall I prove Judas to Hans? No. Shall I cry treason to my corporation? No. I shall be fat and yuck then. But give me your angel shall tell you. So he says that I will not betray my friend, I will not go against our union, our corporation, our guild, and I will not be a traitor to the corporation. So if I do that, then I will be fucked and yucked. That is, joke means that I will be kind of badly treated or punished for this. But then I will not say, but the angel will speak. So if you give me money, then the angel will speak and you will come to know. Lincoln, do so, good fellow, 'tis no hurt to thee. Send simpering Sib away. So let Sybil leave the place, and then I will tell you secretly. How so I get you in? And Sybil exits. Preachers have ears and maids have wider mouths. So there is a reason why I wanted Sybil to leave, because maids have wide mouths. But for Hans, wide mouths means that they will spill the beans everywhere. They will talk to a lot of people. But for Hans Franz, upon my word, tomorrow morning he and young Mistress Rose go to this gear. Go to this gear means they go to do this. And this is what? Marriage. So tomorrow Hans will go and do this with Rose. Hans Franz is a kind of rhyme for the sake of fun. They shall be married together by this rush, or else turn Fark to a firkin of a butter to tan leather withal. Firkin means a small cave, a small pot where one would put butter. So if you do not find them where they are going to marry, then you may call Fark a piece of butter, or a keg where butter can be kept. But art thou sure of this? Am I sure that Paul Stipple is a handful higher than London Stone? He means to say that I am dead sure about this, but humorously he refers to Paul Stipple, which was burnt in a fire. Therefore, it being higher than anything in London does not arise. The question does not arise. Or that the pissing conduit leaks nothing but pure mother bunch. The pissing conduit, it refers to conduits were sources of drinking water in London. So a particular conduit was called pissing conduit because it used to leak. And Mother Bunch was a famous hostess of a tavern. So here Fark either means that Mother Bunch adulterates her drink with water, or the color of the water is color of The brown color of beer is that of the pissing conduit. Then he says, am I sure, am I lustifer? God's nails, do you think I am so base to gull you? So do you think that I will fool you? I am telling you the truth. Lincoln, where are they married? Dost thou know the church? So that is most important information, in which church they are going to get married. And Firk tries to remember the name of the church. The name of the church was, St. Faith's Church. And Firk forgot or appears to forget it and tries to remember and says that it is something by which men swear. So either we swear by the mass, no, it is not by the mass, or by my truth, no, it is not truth, by my faith. So people swear by my faith. So in this way he comes to remember the name. So he calls it a swearing church. It is I by my faith's church under Paul's cross. There they shall be knit like a pair of stockings in matrimony. It is a pair of stockings. They are partners. One cannot do without the other. So they will be married in that particular church. There they will be inconi. The word inconi is a slang word which means delicate or pretty or nice. Upon my life, my nephew Lacy walks in the disguise of this Dutch shoemaker. So now Lincoln gradually comes to suspect that Hans and Lacy are the same person. Yes, forsooth, Firk says. Doth he not, honest fellow? No, forsooth. I think Hans is nobody but Hans, no spirit. No spirit. He is not a ghost. He is not a spirit. He is Hans. So I believe that is the truth. And basically, Firk says, I do not know which Lacy you are talking about. I only know about Hans. My mind misgives me now, it is so indeed. So now Otley also suspects that Hans the shoemaker is none other than Roland Lacy. My cousin speaks the language, knows the trade, Lincoln says. So my nephew, he speaks the Dutch language and he knows shoemaking. Let me request your company, my lord. Your honorable presence may, no doubt, refrain their headstrong rashness, while myself, going alone, perchance may be overborne. Shall I request this favor? So Otley says that in this pursuit of the two, we must be united. Because if I go alone and try to catch them, because of their headstrong rashness, that is, they are so passionate and unreasonable now that they may neglect my words. I may be overborne, means I may not be obeyed. And therefore it is better if your honor accompanies me, because your honorable presence, if you go there, your words may work. This or what else? Lincoln says that there is no alternative. We must go together. Then you must rise betimes, for they mean to fall to their hay pass and ray pass, pindi pandy, which hand will you have very early. Firk is using words which do not mean much. Hay pass and ray pass, like abracadabra, words of magic. Pindi pandy, games of children, like handy dandy, which hand will you have. So this kind of games of children. So Firk says that you must go, you must rise betimes, that is, you must rise early in the morning, because you know hay pass and ray pass, that is what will happen, they will do it before you can arrive. My care shall every way equal their haste. This night accept your lodging in my house, the earlier shall we stir, and at St. Faith's prevent this giddy harebrained nuptial. So Otley says that we will be very careful. They may be hasty, but we will try to reach before they can get married. And he invites Lincoln to stay the night with him at his place, so that they can leave early in the morning. This traffic of hot love shall yield cold gains. They ban our loves and will forbid their bans. Hair-brained nuptial. Nuptial means marriage. Hair-brained, that is something ill-plotted. And this exchange of hot love, traffic exchange of hot love shall yield cold gains, because ultimately it will result in something bad, cold gains. There will be nobody will be benefited out of this marriage. They ban our loves, that is, ban means curse. They curse our love, or they neglect our love, and we will forbid their bans. BANN, ban means announcement of marriage, formal announcement. So before a couple would get married, there will be a formal announcement in the church a few days before the marriage, maybe a few weeks before the marriage. The formal announcement will be there, and if anybody has any objection against that marriage, then that person might go to the church and declare that he or she forbids the bans, that is, objects against that marriage. We have in one of Thomas Hardy's novels this example of forbidding the bans. At St. Faith's Church thou sayest, yes, by their truth, be secret on thy life. So Lincoln says that do not tell anybody else about this marriage. Yes, when I kiss your wife, ha ha, here is no craft in the gentle craft. So here is no craft means there is no cunning here. I am being honest. I came hither of purpose with shoes to Sir Roger's worship, whilst Rose his daughter be coney-catched by Hans. So I brought this pair of shoe, and at that time coney catching in Elizabethan England meant tricking somebody. So as I told you that the society was looked upon as divided between knaves and gulls. So some people were out to cheat others. So plenty of people would try to earn in the illegal manner by cheating people. So they were called coney catchers. So the coney means a rabbit. So like a hunter catches a rabbit, similarly they would catch a stupid person. So here Puck means that Rose will be coney catched, that is tricked into marriage by Hans. So now these two girls will be at St. Faith's Church tomorrow morning to take Master Bridegroom and Mistress Bride napping. So these two girls, these two stupid old men, they would go to St. Faith's Church in the morning to stop the bride and groom from marrying, and they in the meantime shall chop up the matter at the Savoy. Rose and Hans in the meantime, chop up means settle the matter at the Savoy. So the Savoy was a pauper's hospital. Pauper means poor. So poor men's hospital, and attached to that hospital there was a church, and many clandestine marriages took place in that church or chapel, a small church or chapel. So Hans and Rose they are going to have a clandestine marriage. Therefore they selected this church at this chapel at Savoy. But the best quote is, Sir Roger Ottley will find my fellow lame Ralph's wife going to marry a gentleman, and then he will stop her instead of his daughter. So Ralph's wife Jane is going to marry Hammond, a gentleman, and Ottley is going to stop him. So that will be the best sport. Oh brave, there will be fine tickling sport. Soft now, what have I to do? Oh, I know. Now a mess of shoemakers meet at the Woolsack in Ivy Lane to cause my gentleman of lame Ralph's wife. That's true. So he says that what am I going to do now? And he says, yes, a number of shoemakers, they are plotting this against Hammond. That is how they would cheat Hammond, and Hammond would fail to marry Jane. So I will join them. Alack, alack, girls, hold out tack, for now smokes for this jumbling shall go to rack. So, rhyme, popular rhyme where the girls are warned that they must be careful or they may lose their virginity. Jumbling means disorder but also has sexual connotation. Smock is the skirt worn by the girls, and the smoke will go to rack. So the skirt will be destroyed for this jumbling, this disorder. Basically here fark means that the marriages will be, one marriage will be stopped and another marriage will take place. So it is only through clever plotting that this is possible. Okay. So the scene ends with this theme of disorder, jumbling, and the theme of sexual adventures and misadventures. Aureum tenus, it is given in the footnote if you have the same edition. Aureum tenus means up to the ears, and aureum genum tenus means up to the knees. But Ralph interprets aureum tenus as 10 pieces of gold.
Which was the second one?
Aureum genum tenus. Genum tenus means up to the knees. Genu means knee. So up to the knees. And Ralph interprets as 10 pieces of silver. So he by making wrong use of Latin phrases, he is making a funny, humorous speech here. So basically he says that you give me 10 pieces of gold, then it will work. If you give me 10 pieces of silver, then it will not work. And in scene 17, the next scene, we again see Simon Eyre, his wife Marjorie, and we see that Lacey and Rose are also there. So in this scene we see how Simon Eyre also plots with Lacey regarding their marriage, and he gives him full support. Now why does he give him full support? Because he is grateful to Lacey for bringing to him this transaction where he could buy the merchandise of the ship, and Lacey also gave him loans which helped him buy it. So we know that Lacey did not do it just out of charity. He did it because he wanted to work under Simon Eyre and keep him in good humor so that he could continue with his disguise as a shoemaker. But it is here that these two plots intersect. The plot of the romantic affair between Lacey and Rose and the plot of Simon Eyre and Marjorie as becoming mayor and wife of Lord Mayor. So the two plots intersect here and they help one another in the plot of fooling Otley and Lincoln and successfully accomplishing the marriage between Lacey and Rose. So Eyre, as we know, that he is a very dramatic person. He speaks in a dramatic way with a lot of passion and so. This is the morning then, stay my bully, my honest Hans, is it not? The word honest usually is used with respect to working class people and subordinate people. So they would use honest when they address a subordinate person. So Simon thought Lacey to be a shoemaker under him, so he calls him bully, honest, and so on. So this is the morning then. So this morning your plot will come to fruition. That is, you would get married to the girl you love. This is the morning that must make us two happy or miserable, therefore if you. So Lacey says, we will be either happy if our plot succeeds or miserable. So if you help us. Away with these ifs and ands, Hans, and these etceteras. Which means that Simon takes great pride in being a man of, strong word and straightforward manner. So he says that there is no if and but. So come straight to the point. By mine honour, Roland Lacy, none but the king shall wrong thee. Come, fear nothing. Am not I Seameyer? So I promise that none but the king will be able to harm you. The king is all powerful, so Simon can't ensure. But about others, he says that I will prevent anybody else from harming you because I am the mayor. Is not Seameyer Lord Mayor of London? Fear nothing. Rose, let them all say what they can. And then he breaks into a song. Dainty, come thou to me. Laughest thou? So a popular song, and Rose appears to laugh hearing Simon singing. Good my lord, stand her friend in what thing you may. Marjorie says that, my lord, you stand her friend. Now this phrase is also ambiguous. So stand her friend means, the apparent meaning is that you be friendly to her and help her in these matters. And the other meaning has a sexual connotation, that is, you may do what you want sexually with her. Why, my sweet Lady Maggie, think you Simon Eyre can forget his fine Dutch journeyman? So even though Simon now knows that Hans is no Dutch journeyman, but he is Roland Lacy, but Simon says that I will not forget him. Fie, I scorn it. It shall never be cast in my teeth that I was unthankful. Never be cast in my teeth, that is, I must never be accused of being ungrateful. Lady Maggie, thou hadst never covered thy Saracen's head with this French flap, nor loaden thy bum with this fardingle. 'Tis trash, trumpery, vanity. So he calls his wife Lady Maggie, Marjorie Maggie, but a lady now, and she is decked like a lady, dressed like a lady, and Saracen's Head was a popular tavern where the head of a Saracen or a Muslim was displayed as the sign of an inn, of a tavern, and Simon is talking about Maggie's head, says that you would not have covered your Saracen's head with the French hood, the French flap, nor you would have covered your bum, your hips, with the fardingle. So all this has been possible because of my becoming the mayor. So mockingly he said that all this is trumpery, vanity, Simon Eyre had never walked in a red petticoat nor wore a chain of gold. Red petticoat is the scarlet gown of the Lord Mayor. So a chain of gold is also something that the Lord Mayor is given to wear. But for my fine journeyman's potaks, so the Portuguese gold coins which Lacy had given him. So Simon says that because of his help, financial help, that I could become the Mayor of London. And shall I leave him? No, prince am I none, yet bear a princely mind. So often he repeats this phrase, which means that I am not a nobleman by birth, but I have the qualities or the virtues of a nobleman. Thus Simon suggests that he has all the good qualities of standing in good stead, helping his friend, in the matter of helping his friend when he needs his help. Saracen, this word was used to refer to Muslims, Turks, Muslims. Saracens had, the inns or the pubs, the public places, drinking places, inns. In England, every inn has a signboard which has an image, and the inn is named after that sign. So there was a particular inn which had the sign of a Saracen's head. It is the head of a Saracen, a fierce Muslim soldier.